Hello, my name is Lucas, this is Bit of Lit, and I'm here to discuss a fantastic volume of a history on the first 50 years of Adolf Hitler's life, written by Volker, Ullrich, Hitler, Ascent, 1889 to 1939. It is a phenomenal work that I read 4.5 years ago when it first came out in English. The second volume, which covers the last 6 years of his life, Downfall, I believe is what it's called, came out last year. And I wanted to read it last year, and I wanted to reread this one last year for November, but I got busy. But I thought, I'll just wait and I'll hold off till this November because Hitler really had a thing against the Weimar Republic and November criminals, and I just thought, what better time than to read about, a massive November criminal than November. Anyway, this particular set of biographies, in the introduction to Ascent, Volker Ullrich explains the exigence, the purpose of his writing this, given the fact that there are an endless supply of books on this particular subject. And his reasoning is that for all of the major cornerstone works of biography and history that come out, he points to a handful of them, even to Ian Kershaw's, which was the last major work that became extremely popular, to point out their strengths and what they brought to the table, what was new and fresh for them, and the research that they did, but also to point out some weaknesses. And one of those is, I would just like to read a little bit. As Karl Dietrich Bracher once formulated, the basic problem with approaching Hitler is to explain how such a narrow-minded, unpleasant fellow could found and carry a movement of such immense dimensions and consequences. Kershaw rephrased the question as, how do we explain how someone with so few intellectual gifts and social attributes could nevertheless have such an immense historical impact, could make the entire world hold its breath? And Volker Ullrich simply asks, but what if those premises are wrong? What if Hitler's horizons and intellectual capabilities were not so crassly underdeveloped? And that's what this book does. It explores the first 50 years of his life, from birth to the precipice of World War II. And it looks at his political ingenuity and also his social skills. And it, according to him, his findings and his research, he finds that he's an incredibly complex, very odd, strange, terrible man. And I'm all for this book. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. He's just really fascinating in his own way. I think Thomas Mann said it best. The fellow, I just love the way he describes Hitler, who he really did not like. The fellow is a catastrophe, but that's no reason not to find him interesting as a personality and destiny. I love, that is the perfect description of this guy. He is a megalomaniac who is incredibly self-conscious and self-aggrandizing, of course, and completely and utterly bizarre. I mean, ignoring his deep-seated, regressive, hateful, anti-Semitic bigotry. If he didn't have that, and he was, that is bizarre, of course, but everything else about him is just so strange. He's such a weirdo. Uh, he has a bit of an inferiority complex when he's around women his own age, which is why he liked young women, because he wanted to mold them and control them. He had a thing for his young niece, who eventually died or killed herself, and Hitler's gun was nearby. And then eventually he found Eva Brown, who was a bit of a mistress. Nobody could really know about her, because he didn't want people to know. He didn't want anybody to know anything about his private life, especially his childhood, and anything before his time in service. He really did not want that. Didn't want anybody to bring it up. Didn't want anybody to find out. He found all of the documents he could that pointed to him, and had those subsequently burned and destroyed, at least, before his own death. There are countless times where he's talking with one person, and like he doesn't really look them in the eye. He gets in a bit of a frenzy of himself, and he starts looking off in this one spot, and then he starts, getting riled up and talking as if he's in the beer hall, in the 20s, giving a speech to an auditorium. And his leadership style is just insane. I mean, he's insane. But he really believed in social Darwinism to an extreme. And he applied that belief to his leadership style, according to this book. And he applied that belief to his leadership style. And so what he did was he would kind of keep everything at arm's length, and he wanted the people he'd had appointed and other people that were below him in positions of power. He had the final say, of course, on everything, because he made sure that for the National Socialists he was the irrevocable leader. And this led to all of his minions, his thugs, his gang members, trying to figure out what his will was, and enacting what they thought his will was, which led to things becoming more extreme, and would also, as it says, would also lead to a more dynamic governmental style, because everyone is constantly trying to make action happen to curry favor and get things that they want. And that led to some horrific results. I mean, he had incredibly anti-Semitic views. Apparently, according to this, what he wanted to do was to drive out the Jews out of Germany, get living space for the Aryan Germans from the east, drive out the Bolsheviks, drive out the Jews who he wanted to drive them out and basically take all of the money and resources that they had and make sure that Germans had it. And the plan initially, I guess, was just to drive them out. But then through this sort of bizarre competition, plans start changing, and things get more extreme as money is being used for rearmament and these kind of things. It changes into what we know today as one of the worst crimes against humanity. ever. Now, I don't know for sure if that is true or just how Volker Ullrich's research led him to believe, but I can see that. I guess this is the only history biography I've read on Hitler, but I can see definitely how, with that kind of leadership style, things could really, I mean, it was already out of control. These people were monsters, but they had their own motives, and they're all bad motives. But I can see how that kind of would lead to dynamic changes and increased volatility in terms of the actions taken by the government. Anyway, he's a very strange guy. These are just some of the... It goes really well in depth into his history, each part, his relationship with women, like I said, his relationship with other people. A lot of the notes from Goebbels' diaries are in here. A lot. And is a real strong primary source, heavily prevalent. It goes into his, time in prison, time in World War I, as he's becoming chancellor, and how rapidly everything changes for the worse. And it's like a slow but steady push to gaining more and more power. And as soon as he and Papen start talking with President Hindenburg, and eventually by the end of January in 1933 gets the chancellorship, the rapidity in which Germany changes at that time is mind-boggling, because all of a sudden everything is off the tables. And it's just incredible the way it shows his ability to understand politics. Anyway, he does make mistakes, certainly, but the way it's presented here, we can see he's not just a common man with limited intellectual horizons. He does have a mind for politics. Incredibly socially awkward in some instances, has inferiority complexes, and when he's talking to individuals, sometimes he's talking to an audience and really himself doesn't let people talk at all, because he wants to hear his own voice. He doesn't want to hear from other people. He wants everyone to hear him. But also, he could be quite pleasant to people and friendly in a way, but it does seem like not a lot of people were actually that impressed with him. Lots of Germans became obsessed with him, and there were all kinds of things with his face on it everywhere, and people would buy this, and lots of people in this new regime buying into National Socialists just so that they could get a piece of the action, as all the money is being diverted from Jewish businesses, and this new dynamic economy as things are growing, the money being diverted from Jewish businesses into Aryan German hands, basically. You see the way things change, and people start grabbing for what they can get. These thugs, these people who are okay with the thugs, people who just want something for themselves, but are also okay. Anyway, really great exploration of this incredibly complex, sad, pathetic November villain. Okay, thank you, goodbye.